You check your watch. The hour hand and the minute hand align perfectly at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You feel that familiar heaviness settling in your body. Your mind is cluttered with the fatigue of the day and the rush of tasks yet to be done. In the modern world, whether on the high floors of corporate skyscrapers, in bustling factories, or stuck dead center in traffic, this moment is usually just a mundane time slot marking the onset of a biological crash, the dreaded afternoon slump. For many of us, these are the most unproductive, drained minutes of the day. However, right now, at this very second, behind an invisible veil, a cosmic event that altered the course of human history continues to reverberate. This moment is not merely a chronological time zone, it is a threshold, where the heart of time stops, where creation holds its breath. Because at this exact hour, the distance between heaven and earth was reduced to zero, and eternity flowed into time. Mystics call this the hour of mercy. But why? Why not the stroke of midnight? Why not those peaceful moments when dawn breaks? Why 3 p.m., the most chaotic, noisy, and worldly hour of the day? To find the answer, we must step away from the comfort of our modern world and rewind the clock about 100 years. I want to take you to Poland in the 1930s, to that fragile and eerie period between two great world wars when dark clouds were gathering over Europe. These were the years when the shadows of the most brutal totalitarian regimes in human history, Nazism and communism, were slowly casting their darkness over the entire continent. Fear ruled the streets. People's hope for the future was being extinguished day by day. It was a dark atmosphere where human dignity was systematically trampled and a moral collapse was unfolding. In such a world, a simple nun with limited education, known to no one, named Maria Faustina Kowalska, was undergoing an earth-shattering experience in the silence of her convent cell. She could hear the footsteps of approaching disasters, but she heard another voice as well, the voice of Jesus Christ. As an answer to this dark age, to this deep misery of humanity, Jesus gave Faustina a radical message. God's mercy is greater than humanity's misery. And Jesus pointed to a specific time frame for this mercy to flow onto the earth, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In these revelations, Jesus stated that 3 p.m. is a sign for the end times, and that he was throwing the doors of mercy wide open before the day of justice arrived. This was not just a line jotted down in a pious woman's private diary. It was an attempt at divine intervention in the flow of history through mercy. But there is a much deeper philosophical dimension we need to understand here. What is time? Humanity has sought the answer to this question since its existence. Today, in the modern, secular world we live in, we perceive time only as a linear line. We measure it, divide it, sell it. We say time is money. The Greeks called this kind of fleeting, depleting time Chronos. Chronos is ruthless. It ages us and leads us to death. However, the mystical tradition speaks of another dimension of time, Kairos, that is, quality time. Kairos is not the ticking of the clock, it is the right moment, where time is cut vertically, where the divine touches the mundane. This is exactly the door St. Faustina opens for us. She transformed 3 p.m., the busiest, most worldly moment of the day, into a space of transcendent encounter. Think about it. Right at that moment, when your work is most intense, when the phones won't stop ringing, when your mental energy is fluctuating, Jesus demands something from us as a rebellion against modernity's idols of speed and production. He says, as often as your duties permit, stop, even if only for a brief moment. This demand actually invites us to free ourselves from the perception of time we are enslaved to and align ourselves with eternity. In this documentary, we will not just talk about a prayer ritual. We will examine why that moment when Jesus took his last breath on the cross 3 p.m., created a theological earthquake. We will discover what changed in the heavens and on earth at that moment, why the temple veil was torn, and how the blood and water flowing from that wound, opened by a Roman soldier's lance, offers healing to our anxiety-ridden states of mind today. If you are ready, set aside your perception of time, because in a moment we will step through that mysterious threshold where chronological time ends and the great hour of mercy begins. We are spiraling back through the tunnel of time, much further back than 1930s Poland, to the hill where it all began. The place is Jerusalem, Golgotha, that is, the place of the skull. The calendars show the year 30 or 33 AD. But that day is a strange day, one that even the sun refused to witness. Sacred texts tell us that from noon onwards, an inexplicable, suffocating darkness settled over the entire earth. It was as if nature was mourning to accompany the suffering of its creator, withdrawing the sunlight. This darkness lasted exactly 3 hours, and then, when the hours marked that destined moment, the 9th hour, ante enate hora in Greek texts, a spine-chilling cry tore through the silence. That man, hanging on the cross, his body rendered unrecognizable, Jesus Christ, shouted with the last shred of breath left in his lungs, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, meaning, my God, why have you forsaken me? This cry lies at the very heart of our documentary and the theology of the hour of mercy. Please, let's pause here for a moment. This is not merely an expression of physical pain, the agony of nails or thirst. This is the sound of a much more terrifying cosmic horror. Theologians call this the pinnacle of kenosis. At that moment, the Son of God took upon himself all the past, present, and future sins, all the filth of humanity, and under this burden, tasted the experience of separation from the Father. Do you know what the essence of hell is? It is not fire. It is absolute loneliness. Thus, at 3 p.m., Jesus lived that absolute abandonment, that cosmic loneliness in our place. In St. Faustina's diaries, when Jesus reminds her of this moment, he uses the phrase, "my abandonment at the moment of death." At that moment, the Lord of the universe was all alone, like a criminal. And then, the last breath. He said, "It is finished," and gave up his spirit. At that exact second, another mind-boggling event occurred in Jerusalem. In the heart of the city, in the most intimate part of the Temple of Solomon, the massive, thick veil separating the Holy of Holies from the people was torn in two from top to bottom, touched by no human hand. This was not a simple tearing of fabric. It was the end of a separation that had lasted for centuries. That veil symbolized the boundary preventing sinful man from approaching the holy God. The tearing of the veil was the declaration that the ontological obstacle between God and man, caused by sin, had been removed. There was no longer an intermediary or priest sacrificing animals. The border was lifted. Mercy had overflowed from that space and spread to the entire world. But the drama at Golgotha was not over yet. Jesus was dead, but the soldiers needed to be sure. A Roman soldier raised his lance and thrust it into Jesus' side, straight toward his heart. The Gospel writer John records what he saw there with astonishment. Suddenly, blood and water flowed out. Normally, blood does not flow from a dead body, it coagulates. So what was this? Medical science gives us the codes to this phenomenon today. Experts say this could be pericardial effusion, water-like serum accumulating in the heart sac, and hemothorax. To put it in more dramatic terms, Jesus' heart had literally ruptured or burst due to the intense stress and pain he endured. When that soldier thrust the lance, he actually revealed the treasure of a broken heart. This is the source of those two rays St. Faustina saw in her visions shooting from Jesus' chest, the red and the pale rays. This biological reality turns into immense theological symbolism. The Church Fathers say, just as Eve was created from Adam's side while he slept, the Church and the sacraments were born from Jesus' side while he slept the sleep of death. The water symbolizes the cleansing baptism. The blood symbolizes the life-giving Eucharist. This is why 3 p.m. is the great hour of mercy, because at that moment, the sword of justice was sheathed, God's heart was torn open for humanity, and an ocean of mercy gushed forth from it. When a believer prays every day at 3 o'clock, they spiritually position themselves on the hill of Golgotha, right beneath the wound opened by that lance, and drink from this flowing grace. The darkness has dispersed, the Spirit has been surrendered to the Father, and the earth has been washed with the blood of its Creator. Nothing will ever be the same again. History will be rewritten with this blood and water. But as centuries passed, humanity forgot this earth-shattering truth. Modernity reduced this cosmic drama to a mere historical footnote, until that simple Polish nun saw this scene again in all its vividness in her cell in the 1930s. Jesus had returned to remind her of the power of this hour, and in the message he brought, there was an undeniable promise. Now, are you ready to decipher what this promise is and those mysterious lines in Faustina's diary? Approximately 1900 years had passed since that cosmic storm at Golgotha. The world had changed, empires had fallen, technology had advanced, but that deep void and fear inside the human being remained the same. It is at this exact point that the Polish Secretary of God enters the stage, Saint Faustina Kowalska. Her legacy was not academic volumes filling theological libraries, but a notebook consisting of intimate and shaking notes she simply called the diary. Yet hidden between the lines of this notebook was a promise almost too good to be believed, an open check offered by Jesus Christ to humanity. Jesus appeared to Faustina and said the following regarding that famous 3 p.m. hour. "In this hour, I will refuse nothing to the soul that makes a request of me in virtue of my passion." Please read that sentence again. I will refuse nothing. From a theological standpoint, this is a jaw-dropping claim. In the Christian faith, the answering of prayers usually depends on God's will, timing, or the person's spiritual state. But here, it is as if Jesus is handing over a divine carte blanche, a signed blank check. But why? Why is this hour so privileged? Because in Jesus' words, at that hour, mercy triumphed over justice. Under normal circumstances, justice demands that the price of sin be paid. But at 3 p.m., because Jesus paid that price with his own blood, justice was satisfied and stepped aside. All that remained was an ocean of mercy that had burst its banks, washing and purifying everything in its path. But wait, this open check is not a magic wand or an automated wishing machine. For the validity and power of this promise, Jesus presented Faustina, and thus all humanity, with 3 very clear, very specific terms of use. If we want to benefit from the power of this hour, we must understand these 3 rules. First rule, timing. Jesus says, at 3 p.m. This does not mean whenever you are free in the afternoon. It refers to the moment the clock strikes. Why so precise? Because this is fidelity to the historical event. That moment is the moment Jesus' heart stopped. What is asked of us is not a long 60-minute worship, but to be there mentally at that critical threshold when the clock strikes 3. Second rule, the addressee. This is a very critical point and often confused. The hour of mercy prayer must be directed directly to Jesus, not to God the Father or the Virgin Mary, because He is the one dying, being abandoned, and speaking to you at that moment. This hour is the hour of His passion, and the dialogue must be held with the suffering friend. Third rule, the content. Requests must be based on the merits of His passion, meaning we should not say, "Give this for my sake, for my merit," but "Give this for the sake of the pain you suffered, for the sake of the blood you shed." This shifts the prayer from being egocentric to Christocentric. The promissory note we present is not ours, it is His. Here, we need to correct a major misunderstanding that is very common even in the Catholic world. Many believers, when it strikes 1500, immediately pick up the Chaplet of Divine Mercy and start reciting it by rote. Of course, this is a beautiful prayer, but according to Faustina's records, this is not Jesus' primary request for 3 p.m. Why? Because the Chaplet of Mercy addresses God the Father. "Eternal Father, I offer you," we say. However, as we just mentioned, the hour of mercy prayer must address Jesus directly. Jesus did not specifically say, "Pray the chaplet for 1500. His instruction is much deeper and existential. Immerse yourself in my passion. Immerse, that is the word Jesus used, not a superficial remembrance, but like dipping a sponge into water, plunging our consciousness into the pain and love of that moment. Jesus wants empathy from us, not ritual. He wants us to share His loneliness at that moment, to hear His voice when He shouted, "You have forsaken me." The ideal practice is this. When the clock strikes 1500, first talk to Jesus for a brief moment. Make eye contact with Him. Then, if you have time, pray the chaplet. This act of immersion is not only theological obedience, but also a divine therapy prescribed for the greatest illness of modern man. This micropause that Jesus demands of us, saying, "As often as your duties permit, even if only for a brief moment," is actually a call to gather our fragmented minds. So how can this 1-minute pause in the busiest, most stressful moment of the day heal modern man's endless anxiety, fear of the future, and feeling of loneliness? We are moving towards that healing point, where the mystic revelation of the 1930s meets the psychology of the 21st century. Now, are you ready to discover how this 1 minute will change your life? Now, let's put the theology books aside and return to your reality, to the dizzying speed of the 21st century. Phones with notification lights that never sleep, deadlines that must be met, traffic, anxiety about the future, and a never-ending feeling of being late for somewhere. Modern psychology calls this hyperconnectivity. We are connected to everything, but disconnected from ourselves and the spirit. Our soul is divided into 1,000 pieces during the day. Right in the middle of this chaos, when the clock shows 15, that 1-minute pause Jesus asks of us is the most powerful integration therapy offered against the fragmented consciousness of modern man. Maybe you will say, how can stopping for just 1 minute change my life? The answer lies in that very special word Jesus used, immersion. Jesus does not say, remember me. He says, immerse yourself in my passion. This is a very deep focusing technique from a psychological perspective. Not a superficial recollection, but locking your consciousness completely onto that moment, dipping your soul into the reality of that moment and pulling it out. We need to make a very subtle but vital distinction here. This practice is not the same as the mindfulness we hear about so often in popular culture today. Secular mindfulness aims to empty the mind and focus on the moment without judgment. However, the hour of mercy aims to catch the moment and fill that void with a divine person, that is, with Jesus. This is not standing in a void, but making contact with an existential fullness, pleroma. So, what does this contact change in our minds? First, cognitive reframing occurs. Think about it. You got tense with your boss at the office, or your heart is tightening because of a heavy debt that needs to be paid. When you stop at 15 and look at Jesus' terrible abandonment on the cross, your brain automatically makes a comparison. How big is my current trouble compared to the death of God? This question instantly puts the experienced stress into perspective and provides mental relief. The trouble may not disappear, but its crushing weight on you is broken. Let's go even deeper. What is the plague of our age? Anxiety. Psychologists say that at the root of anxiety lie fear of losing control and future worry. Man gets sick because he cannot control tomorrow. The sentence, "Jesus, I trust in you," which is the essence of Saint Faustina's spirituality, is the most powerful antidote produced against this anxiety. The prayer made at 1500 is actually a psychological load transfer ritual. In that 1 minute, you leave the responsibilities you cannot carry, your fears, those scenarios that keep you awake, into Jesus' ocean of mercy. We can call this surrender therapy. Research shows that such surrender-focused faith practices significantly alleviate symptoms of anxiety and depression because the burden is no longer on your shoulders. It is on those shoulders on the cross. And then there is loneliness, the drama of the modern individual who feels all alone in crowds. Jesus' cry of, "Why have you forsaken me?" at 1500 is actually our cry. At that moment, you meet the person in the universe who understands you best. When the suffering person unites their pain with Jesus' pain, that meaningless suffering instantly turns into a redemptive value, redemptive suffering. You are no longer alone. You are companions in pain. Now, you will say, "But I don't have time. I'm too busy." Jesus knew this too. That's why there is incredible flexibility and realism in the instructions he gave to Faustina, as often as your duties permit, where you are. This approach breaks perfectionism in religion. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to perform long rituals. Setting aside just 1 minute or even 30 seconds a day, this small step opens new pathways in your brain neurologically. Over time, this turns into a reflex. Putting down the pen or looking away from the computer to turn to God in the busiest work moment is also the training of the will. This is an existential rebellion against the system. It means saying, "I am not a slave to my work. I am not a victim of time. I am a child of God." This 1 minute is the soul taking a breath, and the soul that breathes begins to heal. So how do we put this theory into practice? How do we concretely establish this connection while at the desk in the office, stuck in traffic behind the wheel, or in a moment of crisis? What are those short and striking prayers Jesus wants? Now, we are moving to the last stop of this journey, the grand finale and the application guide. Get ready, because what you are about to hear could change your daily routine forever. And now, the ticking clock strikes reality. Theory is over, history class is over. Now there is only you and that moment. So how is this 1 minute revolutionary contemplation applied concretely, in the flesh, within daily life? Jesus' instructions in the church's century-old experience show us that he is not asking for the impossible. On the contrary, Jesus wants to infiltrate the most complicated moments of our lives. Let's live through 3 different scenarios together. Scenario 1. At the desk in the office. It's 14:59. Excel files open on your computer screen, unanswered emails. The moment your phone's clock turns to 15, freeze everything, just for 1 minute. No one has to notice. Close your eyes or look at a small picture of a crucifix on your desk. Spiritually transport yourself from the office chair to the hill of Golgotha, to the feet of Jesus, and pass this short but atom bomb powerful prayer through your heart. O blood and water, which gushed forth from the heart of Jesus as a fount of mercy for us, I trust in you. This sentence is theologically the most intense prayer because it contains both the historical event, blood and water, the sacramental life, and the fundamental attitude, which is trust. Scenario 2. In traffic, on the road. You're behind the wheel, traffic is jammed, there is a loud commercial or news on the radio. It turns 3 o'clock. Turn off the radio. Instantly transform the inside of your car into a silent chapel. Think of Jesus' abandonment at that moment. He was all alone on the cross. You are alone inside that metal box. Unite your loneliness with his and just whisper, Jesus, for the sake of your sorrowful passion, have mercy on me and on the whole world. Scenario 3. Moment of crisis. Maybe right at that hour, you receive the worst news of your life, or you are in the middle of a huge fight. Pain, anger, or fear is at its peak. This is the most valuable moment. Take a deep breath and leave your pain in Jesus' pierced hands. Say, Jesus, I unite this pain with your abandonment, mercy instead of justice. Jesus does not want long and fancy literary texts. He wants arrow prayers, ejaculatory prayers that shoot from the heart. Even saying, Jesus, mercy, is enough to open the gates of heaven at that moment. So, what happens when we do all this? Why did Jesus make such an ambitious promise, saying, I will refuse nothing? The answer is hidden in the last word Jesus spoke on the cross, tetelestai, noted in John 19:30. This word, translated as "it is finished" in the Bible, was actually a commercial term in the ancient world and meant the debt is paid in full. In Christian theology, justice requires that the wages of sin be death. Humanity was bankrupt before God with its sins. However, 3 p.m. is the moment when this debt was zeroed out by Jesus' blood. This is why the hour of mercy is a blank check. When you pray at that hour, you are actually going to God the Father and saying, look, my debt is paid, I have the receipt signed in Jesus' blood. Since the price has already been paid, God the Father cannot refuse this request, made for the sake of Jesus' suffering. According to Saint Faustina's vision, prayers made at this hour do not only provide individual relief, they also function as a cosmic shield. It appeases the divine anger over the world and protects humanity from the disasters it deserves. When you spare that 1 minute, you actually become a link in that invisible chain, preventing the world from rolling into the abyss. Dear friends, this message received by Saint Faustina Kowalska in that cold convent cell in the 1930s, which reaches millions today, is not a mystical fantasy. This is a life discipline with deep biblical roots, theologically sound, and psychologically healing. We have seen throughout this documentary that 3 p.m. is the cry of the truth that time is holy against the lie that time is money imposed on us by the modern world. Do you know what you are doing with that just 1 minute pause in the busiest moment of the day? You stop the flow of secular time, that ruthless Chronos, with your own hand and allow eternity, that is Kairos, to enter. You take Jesus from being a distant God sitting in the sky and turn him into a close friend whose pain, tears, and loneliness are shared. And most importantly, by unloading your burdens of anxiety, fear, and sin through trust, you gift your soul that inner peace, shalom, that no psychologist can prescribe. I don't know what time it is now, but tomorrow and every day after that, when the hour and minute hands meet at 1500, you will make a choice. You will either continue to be swept away by the noise of the world, or you will stop for 1 minute and bear witness to the moment that veil was torn, that heart was pierced. Jesus' voice is still echoing. Immerse yourself, even if only for a brief moment. Because that moment is the moment when mercy triumphed over justice, and that moment might just be your salvation. Thank you for listening.